Episode 2. Poem. Soft arcing light burns through time. In the shadowy hollows bore into rock. Swift night soars on high as angels gather. Righteous in their claims they rise. Through forest and glade, mountain and river they dance. Over tree and creature lurking low. Though men shiver and die beneath the sky, they fly. Inexorably they glide forward, upward, never looking back. Slowly, softly, then all at once and forever. Cruising the boundary between what is dead and what is dying. Never pausing, always flying. Behind the crowd a man stumbles, moans and shatters. Pieces scatter into every moment. Motionless they fly, voiceless they shout. The world and ages and deeds of men flatten and smudge away. The World Farmers. They came from the beaches. They rose from beneath the sands all those years ago. They were huge, bigger than anything we could have imagined. Those titans stood up and the land heaved. That was so long ago now, few of us remember the time before. They had been sleeping beneath the earth since long before we had poked our heads above the ocean surface and breathed the air with forming lungs. They moved like the continents or the receding cliff faces of the world. We came and went like flickers around them, as they moved, filled with a single purpose. Thoughts slid like molten lava through their cavernous minds, as we lived and died over and over. The sky rushed with colour and lines. All of our attempts to stop them did nothing. They were immune to the transient. Constants in a changing universe. We knew they spelled our doom. Always. But we never imagined it would be like this. It became so ingrained in culture so quickly that it was merely a fact of life after a couple of generations. Huge creatures breaking through the crust as they stood up straight. The landscape shifted around the coasts of the world. There were 10 of them in all. They all moved in perfect synchronization. Far too slow for individuals to care, too constant to stop. They spelled the end. We worshipped them as gods, of course. What else were we to do? Their heads broke the surface as one. Their speed mirrored their importance and mission. They were greater. It was that simple. Our time had ended as soon as it had begun, and they were just waking up. Each was as different and terrible as the last to look upon. They were captured and told about through history rather than news. That was their way. To them the heavens spun with light and the lands were incidental. They broke free of their prison and stood up. Their heads breaking the cloak of sky, just like our ancestors had all that time ago. A short minute to those things, no doubt. Forests had grown on their shoulders and backs. Cities and sprawling societies littered their heads and torsos. But then they jumped. They exhaled atmospheres that engulfed and surrounded them as they moved, upwards and outwards, each in a different direction. The lands behind and between them died as they moved, and the things that clung to them became more vivid and strong with each century that ticked by. They were headed far out into the blackness. The lands of them drifted apart until they were isolated entirely. their movements measured in the ages of stars and planets. Eventually we came to only know our own vessel, and what remains to us at the dawn of things comes in misty fragments, mixed with the veils of legend. We had been a seed and it was ripe to be sown. We know that now that we have planted and bloomed. We had learned ourselves, far back down that well of eternity which we now peer, to farm the lands and grow our life. Just as it takes many trees to make a forest, and many forests to make a land, it took many of us to create a single of them, but they were not whole units, as none of us are. We are merely amalgams of seething entities that live and die in flashes to keep the firework display of us alive. We had looked down this chain many times. Now we looked up. It kept moving, always, drifting like a pregnant shark to its spawning pool. Once it had reached that dark and quiet place, a well of nothing amongst the white spattered landscape, it finally stopped, like a glacier running down. It curled into itself and opened up. The entrails of civilization and life, now unrecognizable from its dawn time, slid inside. That was where we coalesced. We knew each of our sister worlds would now be so different we could never even relate. Everything we were joined, everything we had been, and everything we ever could have been. It spilled forth and sloshed into a sea of collective thought and form. Then, as the eons flowed by, we returned to that primordial pool, that warm puddle that had begun it all. Only this time, it was a single womb. The waters broke and our head crowned out into a universe now old and changed. We saw with new, enormous eyes what we never could have alone, broken into too many pieces. Now we understand at last. We can barely see our fleeing mother drifting away into the shadows on the edge of thought. We all know she is done, her purpose met. She will end happy. That's all any of us can hope for. Our time has begun. We will continue to sow the seed of ourselves throughout the stretching cosmos. That is what we do. We farm the worlds. Snapshot. I am writing on a laptop. The Mountain Goats is playing in the background, and I'm in my room on a Wednesday night at 1 AM. I just watched Synecdoche, New York with my sister. The film inspired me to think more deeply about life and really try to live it, and also to create true and honest things. I really want to write sometimes, and feel the urge to, but I struggle to keep at it or feel in the right mood very often. Perhaps all we can write is our own truths, or at least to explore and try to find them. Perhaps all stories are just filters for this. I know this is not an original thought, and perhaps not even true at all. And perhaps I'd be better suited to other mediums, but it is still worth doing. Even if you are saying things that have been stated and discovered many times before. Some things are worth restating. Sometimes the exploration and the search for them is worth it in itself, and the results don't matter. Sometimes the fact that it is yours makes it meaningful. This probably won't lead anywhere, but then again, what does? I hope I can build a life around those I love, doing the things I love, and be as happy as possible for as long as possible before I die. There are other ways to live, and perhaps I will understand them as I get older. But for now it's something, and that's all there is. Everything I type brings meaning and is more valuable than the nothing that exists before it. This is what life can be, and we write it by living it. We are characters within this, and like all good characters, we all have flaws and things to overcome, but they just keep going, if we're lucky. We are all absurd, and that is beautiful. Everyone's experience is so different you can never really understand where they come from. But I think that trying is the most valuable and important thing we can do. Lots of things I've already said are probably deeply wrong, but I did say them. It is part of what is real. It could easily be argued that this is all self-indulgent, wasteful navel-gazing, but it might help me to live better, so it is worth trying, and it feels quite nice. The song has changed. My friend has messaged back. I got distracted by the internet. This will remain here as a quick glance into my mindset on this day at this time in my life, even if it never continues. It has value, and I am probably reading this back in the future that is my now. Who knows how many times reaching forward into the unknown, now looking back down that dim tunnel. So much forgotten. Or perhaps not. It's over to you now. They packed up their things and made their way to the door. They were finished eating. They paused by the doorway and returned slightly to a flat surface where they unpacked their notebook and committed one final idea to paper. They put it away in their black backpack and headed out the door. They began to walk. It was a long way to go, but it got less with every step they took. They did not stay on paths and footways, but instead forged a more direct route, disregarding the passages carved by society through the landscape. They did, however, follow roads in the way one would follow a river downstream if lost in the wild. They pushed through scrubs and undergrowth by the sides of the motorway, vaulting fences and walls, circumnavigating buildings, and ignoring people entirely. They had a long way to go, but it drew closer with every step.